Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane, and our program tonight, the ancient art of dowsing and how it can help with your health. I am joined by Paul Craddock. I've known actually Paul for a number of years, and he's been working with dowsing for even more years than I've known him. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us for this program.
Yeah, not at all. Yes, I've been involved with dowsing since I was about 12 years old. My dad took me between two ancient standing stones in Wales, monoliths, and he said, if you walk across between the stones, your rods will cross. So dowsing rods will go into that. So we often use a forked twig in the ancient times, but we use angle rods these days. So I've been hooked since then. So I guess 40 years, probably more. And so the topic tonight, obviously, it's dowsing for health, but I don't know how many people have heard of dowsing even. Perhaps you could have put something in the chat. But certainly, as Sara said, it goes back to ancient times, ancient Egypt, more modern times. More modern times, actually, it's been in the news quite recently. Water companies in the UK have been using it to find leaks. So you can use it for all manner of things. Back in the Viet Cong War, they used it to find mines, and underground mines. The army use it. A lot of the members of the British Society of Dowsers have been going since the 1930s, or ex-military. So they would use it to find water specifically, especially abroad in India, Sri Lanka. Used to find water. So most people, if you've hardly heard of dowsing before, you're most likely associated with looking for water, underground water, and certainly there's lots of professional water dowsers still around, including in the UK, and most work on a no fine, no fee basis, and consider they own their own drilling rigs, and I think to drill these days depending on the strata, it's about £10,000 to drill. And if you're working on a no fine, no fee basis, you have to be good.
Yeah. Don't you just?
Yeah, so it's commonly heard of to do with finding underground water and streams and drilling wells. Also oil. In America, they call them Dougal buggers, where they have professional dowsers located in oil fields. And there's many cases well documented where the Rockefeller wells are located in oil fields. So it's a vast subject to cover, in about an hour or so. We're going to try and talk a little bit about health. There's most people interested in health. So yes, most dowsers may use angle rods, so X marks a spot sort of thing. We used to be old Y. Used to break a twig off a tree in the olden times, and a forked twig, and it'll twitch it found water, but they tend to break, so we've moved on. You may have heard of pendulum dowsing, so you get a yes or a no response. So with angle rods, it's mainly X marks a spot and a few other things you can get from that. With pendulums, it's yes or no response. Again, there's other actions you can get. So, I started off back in Wales, moved down to Bournemouth about 30 years ago, and got involved with Wessex Dowsers. So I was chairman of the Wessex Dowsers for a while. Started teaching for the British Society of Dowsers, and I think at the end of the 90s, I think I started teaching Bournemouth Adult Education. So it's a local county council in Dorset. They have an adult education section, and teaching adults in evenings and weekends. And I started teaching dowsing evening classes. So it got quite well known. We had some TV interest, a bit of synchronicity. We got interviewed on Southern TV by the reporter's name was Martin Dowes, believe it or not. There's some filming. I run courses. Run courses for British Society of Dowsers, run my own courses, Earth Energies, Health. Beginners courses are very popular. So I've also got a book I'll publish on that. Where we can go? About 2008, we found I put in a course at Knowlton Henge, a little while just up the road from us, near Wimborne. If you can picture it, it's a large earthen mound with ancient church in the middle, very sacred site. And we decided to do some filming up there, take some pictures. And a friend of mine, son, came along. He was about 11 at the time, and he had one of those old sort of film cameras. You don't see them anymore, do you? But anyway, he clicked away, and 2 weeks later developed the film, and we found some particular area. We found lines of energy, like what looked like wire, but we could see through it. So it's energy lines. So a couple of weeks later, I'd run a course, and I said to my students, look, let's see if we can find where they're going. And one guy, he was actually a landscape gardener, and his rod's crossed. X marks the spot. And next thing, he calls me over, and there's a bit of a rumpus going on, and he's peeling back earth from his fallen standing stone. So we'd actually found a fallen, hidden standing stone just below the surface in Knowlton Henge. So from that, we had English Heritage investigating. We got published in the Archaeological Magazine, British Archaeology, and we were on TV again. We were the only first dowsers to find hidden standing stone in archaeological sites. So it was quite interesting. Yeah, so it's a very practical skill. In fact, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't practical. So what can you use it for? Health, you've got finding supplements, finding allergies. Geopathic stress is a huge subject, especially in Germany, where you're using your dowsing to locate underground streams. Energy lines, Hartmann-Curry lines. As I was explained to Sara before we started, in Germany, you'd have a geopathic stress survey with dowsers before buying a house, just as you'd have a survey here, from a local surveyor. So it's quite interesting. So yes, I'm a geopathic stress consultant. So we go out to people's houses. The wise ones will have a survey before they buy the house. Often they don't. We're trying to put in remedies. And of course, now we add on electroradiation from foam masks and Wi-Fi, that sort of thing, and 5G, which is coming in. We've got meters, so we have meters for that, and meters for some irradiations, and dowsing for other things, especially underground streams. So if we wanted to find an underground stream, we hopefully could. If you wanted to drill down and find some water, but dowsers are a bit like doctors. They tend to specialise in an area which interests them. So if you're interested in gardening, you could be dowsing to find where to put plants, etc. If you're interested in supplements, if you're a therapist, you'd have a knowledge of your therapy, certainly autonomy, maybe whatever it was to do with your body, and you know what questions to ask. So you'd have a background, and lots of therapists are dowsers, aren't they? I think Sara as well. I think you dabble a bit, don't you?
Dabble's the right word.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're a professional. You haven't told me. A lot of people hide away. Yeah, I just had a dowsing for beginner students. I do an online course, and he finally admitted to attending 2 Earth Energies courses just so he's finishing mine. He'd learned some extra. Always learn something extra, even if you spend if you're experienced in doing something, you always learn something extra. So is there any particular area you want me to take? Anything you want me to cover particular before I can talk about dowsing in general? So we've had a basic introduction. What else can we use it for? I mean, the simple things like fault finding. If your car doesn't work or the washing machine's packed up, which is it this section? This section is this section. If you lose your keys, that sort of thing, lose your passports. A favourite one of mine is losing my car. You know, it happens. You park in a multi-story car park, you're rushing around, and you get back an hour later. Where is it? There is a technique using a pendulum called dowsing the PSI line, which is very, very effective. I didn't come up with it. It was a group of searchers in Sweden. I think it was Sweden or Norway. It was at university level, and they found out that if you think of something, an energy line goes to what you're thinking of, even if you don't know where it is. So they were finding lost pets, people, all sorts of things. In the countryside, and if you lose an object, it's the most reliable way. It's very strange, but it's just basic science, undiscovered science, shall we say? But there are many people making a living out of dowsing. It does work, but like anything, you have to take your time, relax, and it's very much the least you try, the easier it is, because we're using the subconscious part of the mind. We have two parts to us. Well, we have more than two parts, but keeping it simple, we have the conscious mind, the bit we think is us, the ego, the personality, the bit I'm talking to you with now, the bit you're listening with, and I think listen to what I'm saying, hopefully. But in the background, there's another part of you, the subconscious mind, which is quietly running everything at the same time, your heart, your breath, and all those thousands of bodily functions it's looking after all at the same time. So it's a very powerful part of you. The conscious mind, which we're talking with now and you're listening with and thinking of, and your rational part can only really do one thing at a time. I think some of you ladies can probably do maybe two things at a time. Most men can't. You know, if we're driving along, don't know where we're going, we have to turn the radio off. You ladies can keep it on. You can multitask better, but seriously, you can't read a book, you know, have a conversation and do something else at the same time. It's impossible to do things very well with a conscious mind. So the dowsing ability comes from the subconscious mind. And as Albert Einstein said, all dowsing is your body is acting through the subconscious mind. It's amplifying a mute response, which you wouldn't normally see without instruments. So whether it's your rods crossing over, or whether it's just a pendulum. If I was to ask, show me yes, or show me something, you wouldn't see any movement. But if I put a pendulum, that it's amplifying the reaction. You can't see my hand moving probably. I said it really quickly, but it's amplifying a minute response. So Albert Einstein just described it. So it's quite widely used. Of course, people don't advertise the water boards don't like to advertise it, but they certainly do use it. It's been in the Daily Mail and a few other papers recently, especially when we get a little bit of a drought. Yes. The dowsers come out. Same in Australia and America, and it's more serious over there when you have droughts, and you'll have people dowsing for water. Australia, New Zealand, that sort of place. There was even a film, wasn't there? The Water Divine a little while ago. You might remember that. It's based on a true story. Okay, yes. So it's a simple connection between the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. So with a pendulum, you may say, "Show me yes," and it's going to go backwards and forwards. It could go around that way. It could go clockwise or anti-clockwise. So we just establish a response. So I say, "Show me yes." It will change for different people, and it's going that way. Show me no, and it's going to go that way for me. So I can I ask this question? And all we do to start with, you may have some practice. So get something circular and just get used to the movements. And a little trick, or tip, I should say, not a trick. But if you keep it as short as possible, it will move very quickly. So how can you make a pendulum? You can buy them online. Loads of pendulums. Go to Amazon anywhere. There's lots, especially the nice crystal ones. Yeah, you got one there. They're all over the place now. Certainly, British Society of Dowsers is a good resource, but Amazon, certainly, eBay, lots of pendulums. It doesn't really matter what they're made of, as long as it's nice and balanced and it feels right for you. So you don't have to buy a particular crystal, a particular metal, just what feels good. I mean, you can start a bunch of keys would probably work, not quite as symmetrical, but if you're stuck, you could use a bunch of keys. So, any questions so far? I'd like to have a bit of feedback, see what people want to, what people are thinking, what they want to know. Any specific area you want me to go into?
Well, I think that, sort of you mentioned, I'd love to go back a little bit in the history, because you mentioned it sort of started in Egypt. So, and a fascination with ancient Egypt anyway. So what was the reason it started? Was there something specific? We
don't really know. We see pendulums in the hieroglyphics. We just traced it back that far. So we've got no real specific how they actually used it. We just seen the instruments they used, which were dowsing pendulums. But it's such a simple device, and you could dowse in many different ways. You can use remote dowsing. We have Hamish Miller, who passed on. He was a blacksmith back in the 80s. Now he was a successful businessman once. Saw that he had a heart attack and had a near-death experience. He said, "Right, I'm going to be a blacksmith in Cornwall." And eventually, he was tracking the energy lines from Cornwall, from Land's End right up to the east coast of England. And there's a Channel 4 film made of his journey. And yes, and he would be able to do devices dowsing, perhaps all different devices. And he one time he was walking through Tesco, he's trying to trace his energy line, and the manager walked up to me and says, what are you doing? Have you got permission? He goes, I've got permission from the management. He goes, so the management is your subconscious higher self. So you have got two parts of you, and the subconscious mind is the more powerful part, and that's the part which connects to the information which you're seeking. So it's a bit like a computer. It is people say the mind's like a computer, and you can program it like a computer. So you would say you have a question in mind, and you would say, for example, is this food good to eat for me? I'll say, show me yes. Show me no. Oops. And I'll say, is this food good to eat for me? I'll say yes. It's a visualization. So I visualize it, what good means, like a tick or feeling healthy. So that's one way of doing it. And then geopathic stress obviously is like it's a major thing. So where you're sleeping is very important. Lots of research been done on that. So you can check for negative energies. You can use kinesiology as a backup test for your strength, testing the strength of your muscles. Anything bad for the body will stress the muscle, will make you go weak. So you could give a statement, and if the statement is correct, it'll be strong. If it's incorrect, it'll be weak. So you can back up your dowsing in that way. It's pretty much a foolproof method to ask another question that way to see if your dowsing's working. But it says you need it, like anything, you need to learn properly and take your time. Don't try too hard. Ever try to pass a driving test? Ever try to get to sleep at night? Ever put too much effort at school or a course or any task? It's harder to do what you want to do. I only passed my driving test because I thought I'd failed. So I thought I'd failed halfway through, so I relaxed. Turned out I hadn't made any critical mistakes, so I passed. So dowsing is the same. That you to concentrate on the question, then relax and let it just flow. So the less you try, the easier it is once you've formulated the question. Yeah.
And it's the formulation of the question, isn't it? Because it's really a matter of asking a question that you can have a yes and a no answer to.
Yes, you ask a woolly question, you'll get a woolly answer, as the sheep say. So but you have to be specific, and there are some questions which you shouldn't be asking question two. You know, how long have I got to live? That sort of thing. You can think of the questions you wouldn't want to know. You shouldn't be asking. There's some questions you can't ask, and some you probably shouldn't ask. So we have a little procedure. So we get my yes or no. So I'll slow down. So I'll say, show me yes. Just my example. So show me is going round and round. So it's a circle. So show me no. It's going to go backwards and forwards. Make it a bit shorter so it goes a bit quicker. So I may say, can I ask Sara's age? No. Okay. So I could say, can I douse this particular question? Say yes. Then I would say, may I? Have I got permission? No. So is this a safeguard? And then you can ask the question if it says yes. Particularly useful with sacred sites. Sometimes the energy's there. You're not meant to go in. For some reason you shouldn't go somewhere. So you shouldn't proceed down a particular avenue. Might not be the right time for you now. I was running a course at Knowlton, an Earth Energies course, and one of the students said, "Can I go in?" No. So what we're going to do, so we've got very confidence. We walked into the site, and I got a no. And there was a coach, one of these European touring companies. They tour in sacred sites of England, and there was a coach party, and I said why it wasn't good to go in. Yeah, so we were there with the works well sometimes. We were there with Southern TV Today. We found the stone, and we had one skeptic, the reporter was a bit of a skeptic, and the producer wasn't on the fence. You expect a bit of skepticism, it's part of the territory really. So it was quite a windy day, so I had to show the presenter how to dowse with angle rod. X marks the spot to find the line in 5 minutes. So fortunately, it was a windy day. I actually couldn't change the microphone, so I managed to the microphone, right? And I should have had to dowse, and she was dowsing quite well, so that worked quite well. But there are times when so always best to check and take your time. And obviously, if you're new to it, you're going to spend a little bit of time finding out about it. But I would say to people watching, dowsing it's a bit like doctors. They specialise eventually after they've trained. So you may have a hobby or an interest or even a work where a day job, you could apply dowsing to. So you tend to specialize, learn the basics, then think how you could specialize in it. One of our back in some time ago, we had Bob Sefton, who's passed on now, but he was a superintendent at Poole Power Station, big electrical power station in Poole, which is no longer there now. But he was a senior engineer there as a superintendent, and he was dowsing then. He was professional. Well, he was an amateur dowser, but and he used to douse for the breaks in the circuits. So they used to go to Bob and say, "We've got a break in the circuit somewhere in the power station." He'd get a map out, because you can map douse. Believe it, strange they do, and he'd mark where the breaks were. They go and dig up and they find it. If they lost some underground cooling pipes, so he'd find those. And it's often a need to do it will focus your mind. And even if you're very inexperienced at dowsing, if there's a need to do something, you override inexperience. For example, I just started out with dowsing, and I bought a house in Poole, little terrace house, and our sewer pipe blocked up. No manhole cover. Where is it? Going to cost thousands of pounds to dig the whole path up. No problem. I thought I get my rods out. Picture the block in my mind. Picture the pipes into the ground. That's when showing me the spot. Cross over. Saw my brother. There it is. Out come the angle grinder, and we dug down. It was right over the top, fortunately. But that was a need, and I've lost my car in Poole car park, multi-story, panicking. What do I do? Pendulum out, found it. I never forget, I ran a dowsing beginners course in Dorchester. This is about 5 or 6 years ago now, maybe longer actually. And I always like to get feedback afterwards. So I had one of the gentlemen who attended, had a haulage company up north in Yorkshire. So he ran a haulage business. And he'd come along to the course just out of curiosity, I'll do this weekend, see how it goes. Anyway, I had an email back after he got back to his work, and he'd actually lost an MP3 player, which is like a little, iPod type thing, and he'd lost it in the yard somewhere. And he tried the PSI line method I talked about. He tried it. It does work, and obviously he was skeptical, but he followed the line into one of his lorries, into the cab, into the driver's seat, crossed over. He lifted the mat under the driver's where the pedals were, and there was his MP3 player. So yeah, we just have successes, and it's just to have an attitude of a see what happens sort of thing. You never know. It can be helpful in times of need.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I sort of remember years ago being in an event. I had a stand. And there was a little girl that sort of came, her mother was off doing whatever she wanted to in the event. It was Mind, Body, Spirit Fair. And I was showing her the dowsing pendulums. I think I had a wooden one at the time. And, and I'd said to her, and I really was expecting one particular answer. She was going to do some course at some whatever class later that day. And I said to the pendulum, whatever her name was, I said, does she enjoy it? And I was expecting a yes, and I got a no. And I looked at her and she said, no, I don't. Mm. It was amazing. I must admit, I tend to do a 3 ask of a question. In that particular case, I don't, because I get, with it, whether it's a couple of no's with a yes or a couple of yeses with a no. So you're asking the questions different way rounds.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's if you like, a way of checking the answers. But I know that I've got 2 ley lines running through the house. We've got an old well that's covered up in the garden, all of which I've sort of worked with dowsing. Pendulum, absolutely. But I also like using the body. So you can use the body, can't you? Not just with the...
You can do a man. Yeah, you can back it up because the body never lies. It can't lie. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And when we've had back in the day when we've run in our dowsing beginners courses, but specifically in our local club called Wessex Dowsers for many years, from the 90s right up to about 20 years it's running. Some of the members used to bring their children, 8, 9, 10, sometimes younger, and they turned out to be actual better dowsers and picked up much quicker than the adults. Reason being, they hadn't been told they couldn't do it. I probably have. I mean, at the moment, I'm having to tell you all that yes, you can do it, and you're probably thinking, "Oh, I don't know about that." But if your parents are both dowsers or they're open-minded, perhaps, and they say, "Well, you can do it," and you haven't got to overcome that initial hurdle. Yeah. And I sent out a newsletter to you, Sara, about a couple of months ago about my niece. Now she's not 10 now. And she says, "Uncle Paul, what are those rods doing in the back of your Land Rover's seat?" She sits at the back. And I said, "The dowsing rods. What are those?" I'll show you. So, of course, she's fascinated. Never heard of them. Well, she has seen them before. But she says, "What can you use them for?" I said, "We can go and find underground pipes outside the house. We can look inside the house for things under the floorboards." So it took about 5-10 minutes. And she was doing it quite well. And then she says, "Can we go and find, we'd lost... My brother had his caravan and the actual electrical wiring that had been put into the driveway. We didn't know where it was." She says, "I kind of knew where it was," but she says, "Can I find that?" So we went off crossed straight over the top. So I pulled all the gravel off, and there they were. And it would take her about 20 minutes. And she was as good a dowser as perhaps it would take me a good hour with someone, an adult. There are people that are exceptions, of course, people pick it really quickly, but so no she didn't think she couldn't do it. She was open-minded, and that's how to approach it. Just have have a air of expectation. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't work, that's great. That's fantastic, because you find one where it doesn't work, and you learn from that. Like everything in life, you learn from your experiences. Classic example of that was I was up in Wales some time ago, and dowsing for energy lines, ley lines up in the hills. There were some standing stones below, ancient sites below, and I was tracking up right up in the hills. I was well prepared: rucksack, compass, water, rods, everything. No mobile phones in those days, and whistle, and mountaineer whistle, and the fog came down. So I got on my compass, and I thought I knew better than a compass. So you make that mistake once in life, and I got hopelessly lost. So I started blowing my whistle, my mountaineer whistle. Only sheep could hear me. No one was coming. I thought, and I knew there's somewhere I knew a point where there was a hut and a trap. I didn't know which direction it was, how far it was. So got the rods out, showed me the direction, just follow down the centre. Never tried that technique before. It had to work. And I'll get to a stream, which way, this way, get to a fence, which way, this way. I just blindly followed it, and eventually I came right up against where the hut was. It took me about an hour or two, got in there and relaxed. So that was a time when I had tried that technique before, but I need to do it, so it worked. So many a time I've got out some scrapes, finding cars, as I said, you've lose things, losing direction in I lost my direction in, what was it, Dartmoor. Again, using the PS Island method, you could use your pendulum to find where the line is. And you have to take sometimes multi-steps because you can't walk through walls and trees and things. So yeah, so it has saved my bacon a couple of times, so more than a couple actually. I just when I started out, you'll laugh at this. When I was 18 years old, shall I go to the nightclub tonight? Yes or no? Is it going to be worth it? Am I going to find a girl? You never know. And then yes. When I first started, this is way back, just left school, and I would try and do the football pools. The football's like the lottery today, and you had to get so many score draws. So you had to pick a team that are going to win or not win. And if you had 7 score draws, you were a millionaire, whatever it was. So you had a sheet of paper, the crosses you put down on about 40. How many it was? 50, I don't know. And I'd say, right, and I was only 16. I wasn't old enough really, so I'd mark where the score draws were, and it was always just 1 or below. So I had I had the knowledge of where it was, but I wasn't allowed to win for some reason. It wasn't meant to be a millionaire at that time. So yes, I had a window cleaning round way back then after leaving school. Set my own business up, and in Wales, it's quite remote, 20 miles to each different town. I needed to know if it's going to rain or not the next day, and if it was going to rain, would I get the work done before I get rained off? So I dowsed the night before with a pendulum. I should go window clean the next day. If I got, and you have to trust it. There's no point in doing it, and don't keep asking the same question. Just go with it. And sometimes I go to work and I get any because of the rain clouds, and I go anyway, trust it, and I'd always get the work done for that day. Rain might come at 3:30, but I would have finished by then. So that's another practical way.
I remember when I was studying my anatomy and physiology, our teacher walked into the classroom sort of at the beginning of a lesson, and he saw me actually dowsing for one of the other students, and that was something totally different, not to do with the class. And he wasn't really into this type of thing at all. And sort of he said to me, "Wouldn't take that into an exam if I were you." I said, "Oh no, I wouldn't bother, because if I tried, I'm sure it would give me the wrong answer, because you shouldn't be asking those type of things."
Yeah, some things you shouldn't be asking. But can I, may I? It's in my book, and I talk about that. Or there's loads of dowsing books out there. But so to do with health, I mean, so we've covered geopathic stress is mainly where you're sleeping, where your bed is. Following on from where you spend a lot of time, like my chair here all day. The office, probably not always, but sometimes I'm out and about. But so a favorite chair where you sleep is most important. It's for your stress. You could use muscle testing for that, because if you're weak, muscle testing on your bed, then it's not a place to be sleeping. Need some attention at least. Even moving a few feet can help. Supplements. How many? Obviously, be sensible. Don't ever take more than recommended dose of anything. But within that, you can use dowsing to find out how many tablets you should take. 1 or 2. Homeopathy. Again, you might have a whole. I have a selection of homeopathic remedies or backflower remedies. You may think of others. You just point to each one. Yes. So you just go along. That's no, yes, this one, sort of thing. At that time. So what is best for me at this time? It will change from time to time. If you have there's food intolerances and allergy and foods that give you allergies, or you have an allergic reaction, which is a bit more serious. Intolerances, or if you've got an allergic reaction, you can pretty know about that pretty quickly. But if you have food intolerance, like perhaps gluten or dairy, just the top of my head, there are lots of other intolerances you could have. You don't really know. It's just sort of dragging you down a little bit, over a period of time. Tomatoes. My wife can't eat tomatoes anymore. Some fruit. So you can find out what you have an intolerance for. Again, you can use muscle testing for that. Dowsing is quite helpful. And also, if you're brave enough and you're in the supermarket, you want to select the right food, then you can. There's a way of finger dowsing, deviceless dowsing, which I won't go into here. I don't care anymore. I mean, we've been out so many times with field trips, teaching people how to douse and with 6 dowsers at the dowsing groups and on courses. Avebury, people come up to us, members of the public come up to us, ask what we're doing, we explain it, and a lot of them will have a go themselves and walk away, really happy. It's amazing. There's real attention. There's one exception to that. We're on an Earth Energies dowsing meeting up Oxford somewhere, and we're at this huge mound. It's like a hill fort type thing, quite a way down. And it was early Sunday morning, and there's one guy up there with his family, and he watched us with our rods. And I said, "Would you like to go?" And he started laughing at us, and he took one step back, and he rolled down the hill all the way down to the bottom. But most people are fascinated, and they like to have a go. And if you don't have a go, you never know, will you? What you might be missing. And so that's what it's all about. So what we got covered: geopathic stress. You got electroradiation, and you've got Wi-Fi problems, 5G. We use meters for that, obviously more reliable. Supplements, allergies, which you know more about because you have an but intolerances. What else would you perhaps be able to use it for? Food in general, a classic one. You go in the fridge. My wife loves ham. I'm a vegetarian now, but there's something in the fridge. Not quite sure. Again, you can frame the question in the right way. Is it good to eat this now? I might visualize myself eating it, and I'm feeling good or feeling bad. Yes or no? Good way of sorting out food, once you get the hang of it. At a restaurant, a good one. You're at the restaurant. You got a menu. Which you run your finger down the menu. If you're brave enough to use a pendulum, you can use Yeah, I've done that quite a few times, and sometimes I think I know better and pick something out that looks nicer, then I always regret it. So a lot of the time with dowsing, in the past I have used dowsing, thought I knew better, and picked something different, and took a different action, and I've regretted it. But it's a way of learning. Yeah, and sometimes with dowsing it doesn't work, of course, and then you learn why hasn't it worked? And a classic example of that, when I got engaged many years ago now, my girlfriend at the time waved goodbye outside her father's house, and her engagement ring flew off and landed in the lawn. I thought, no problem, I'll use my pendulum to find it. Couldn't find it, and it kept saying it was here, and it wasn't here. So I thought, well, why hasn't it worked? So I got 3 empty identical containers, put some metal in one signifying the ring, cardboard another one, and nothing in the other one. So I had 3. Shuffled it around, but not looking, and tried to find the metal, which would have been the ring. I kept getting the opposite every time. The reason we show me yes, show me no is because your reactions can change, and I was getting a no where my yes was. So we knew where it was, because so that's a classic case of it not working. And I've gone back and found out why, and learned from it and moved on. And it won't work every time, certainly, especially when you start out. And I'm always learning. We're all always learning, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely.
So so what else can I think to do with health? But I mean that's a good selection to go on with, I suppose. Drinking, of course, as well. Get a slightly out of the box. I know there's a dowser in America who can actually use dowsing for intent. So if you go back. There's a scientist now who's passed on called Emito Marceau, a Japanese scientist, and he found that he found a way of freezing water and photographing the water crystals, and he found that, you've probably heard of him, yeah? Emito Marceau, I think I pronounced it rightly, and the Japanese scientist, and he would for example, have some water and write on, I don't know, good, bless, a positive thought on there. Happiness, love, that's it, yeah. And he'd freeze the water, and he'd have another glass of water or a test tube, whatever, and write on hate, for example, and then freeze it, photograph the water, and the one, or inevitably the crystals on the love or the positive one would be perfectly formed, and the ones with hate or some negative would be malformed. And he repeated it thousands and thousands of times. They even transformed the whole lake in Japan. And so you can use it for intent. I have some dowsers used to get car parking spaces. That's not unheard of. I've heard an American guy talk about that from 1930s. A person, what's his name? Personal development guru from there. So you can. So I used to run dowsing for intent courses where we'd actually change the frequency of something. That's something else. Use the power of the mind, as Emito Marceau demonstrated, it does work. So that's going into a bit more detail on another time. So there is that, and I know one dowser who will change the quality of biscuits his daughters can eat them. So silly things like that, or if you've got some water, at the tap, change the frequency. But that's just a hint there of what maybe a bit outside the box for some people, but there are. It does work, and you can, and in science is catching up now. You've got Emito Marceau, you've got quantum physics, where the experiment can influence the experiment. You've proven that with quantum science, where you can photograph the quarks, the photons, very much at a nanometer level. So we know the mind is powerful in that way. So that dowsing will just help you focus it if you wanted to go down that road. But it's just a taster, something to think about. Yeah. It's not that far out, really. Yeah. It has actually proven it, that the mind can influence matter and things like that. So anyway, yeah.
I must admit, I've found it very, very useful. Sort of foods to eat, foods not to eat, sort of. But I suppose I use it for many different things, and I will then get people saying to me, "Oh, Sarah, will you douse on something for me, please?" But I suppose I do it because. Well, I suppose I believe in it. I've, like the little girl, sort of getting an answer I wasn't expecting and being 100% right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's lovely to get that sort of confirmation that it really does work. And but it is also trusting. And that's why I suppose I like to ask 3 questions. sort of knowing that obviously the first one's given me a yes, so I might vocalize it in a way that should then give me a no, because it's giving me exactly the same answer, but it's giving me, I've asked it in a roundabout sort of way. And then do a third, whether it's a second no, whether it's a yes, but it's all confirming that original answer.
Yeah.
And I don't feel there's a problem with asking 3 times. I think if you constantly, regularly asking the same question time and time and time again, hoping to get a different answer.
Yeah, you should keep repeating. Yeah, the subconscious mind gets bored and say, "I've already told you this one." Having said that, there's no right way to teach someone how to dowse. I always say, of all the courses I run, I'll teach you one way that works, and if you want to try a different way, that's fine, as long as it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, then and it's like driving. You go for your driving lessons, and you're there like this, aren't you? And then a couple of years later, you've got your own little style, and do it, or like you're writing, you learn to write in a certain way, and then you develop your own style. And whatever works for you, but yes, it's. I would just suggest people have a think of what based on what we've talked about, how it might be able to help you, and experiment and see how you get on, rather than miss out and not try something. Because even if there's nothing you think it could help you with, there will be eventually. You may get lost. You may get lost again, like I probably will, or you lose your passport, your keys, or just want to for your own hobbies. Gardening, whatever it may be, or your health. If you don't practice now, then you'll be disadvantaged when you actually need to do it. It's like and I never forget when I read a book, remote view. Had a remote viewing. Have you had a remote viewing? It goes from the 70s. Yes, and the US military, CIA, and other parts of the army, they had to catch up with the Russians. It's basically using like psychic abilities to go somewhere and view somewhere remotely. It does work. The military have been using it for years, and they said, there's various books. Captain David Morehouse wrote one, and in his book, because I researched it for dowsing, they've given millions and millions of dollars to research remote viewing and dowsing, and we've only got a few hours here and there, haven't we, to research it? But so I always learn from them. And I was reading his book, Captain David Morehouse. He retired from the army, and he was given an account of his. He was introduced to there's an army hut they were all practicing from, dedicated to remote viewing, and he was being he just joined them, and he was being shown around the base, the section where they were, and his commanding officer took him into a room, and there was maps everywhere, drawers and drawers of maps. So this is a map room. He says this is the maps for every area in the world, and this drawer is the pendulums. So we're dowsing, using pendulum dowsing for the maps. Yeah. Map dowsing is something else you can do. A lot of professional dowsers will do it before they go find underground water or oil, for example. Cuts down time before you go on site. Yeah, so it's there. It's been used, has been used, and always will be used. There are professionals using it, but you never know when it might help.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you've written sort of, is it 4 books? So, geopathic stress and electropollution.
Yeah, we cover dowsing in that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Dowsing for Beginners home study course. Just put that link up here.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
and I will make sure that link is underneath the website and under the video for folks. Then therapy for your mind, and most recently the anxiety therapy workbook.
Yeah. If you spot the theme, subconscious mind, a lot of it. So yeah, anxiety is a subconscious thing. So yeah, so I tend to specialize in that area. So interested in that area. Yeah, you tend to specialize what you're interested in, I guess. Yeah, but it's a big interest of mine. Because the subconscious mind is very powerful. That's where the dowsing comes from, and it just connects to where it used to connect to. Yeah, certainly.
And I suppose if you use it for somebody else, the way a lot of people ask me to do it, sort of, but there are times when I just turn around to people and say, I don't actually feel I can ask that question.
Yes. I mean, I never forget. Was up at Kingston Lacey, the National Trust property up near Wimborne, and we had a dowsing on site dowsing meeting there, practical session, and the manager, the site manager of the National Trust at the time came back to us, He said, I used to use that in my day job. He says, when I was a director of this company or other, for asking questions for personnel about other people. So you never know where it's used. Yeah. And it wouldn't be used if it didn't work. No. just like Bob Sefton wouldn't be finding the underground pipes, on the power station. Yeah. They wouldn't have been coming back to him. Yeah.
Oh no, it's fascinating, and it's brilliant. Sort of that, yes, really, obviously, these programs are very much to do with health, but it's not all. But health comes actually in many forms, doesn't it? Because we're talking about sort of the electro stuff and all the sort of EMFs and all sorts of things. It can support you in many different ways.
Mental health is very important. So yeah, so if you haven't got your mental health right, then your body's not right. If you're stressed, your body's not right. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, very important.
Yeah, but it's also being aware that actually there's very much they've sort of done research into the fact that there's that gut sort of heart sort of brain connection, and sort of if you haven't got a healthy gut, so in other words you're not eating healthily, then it affects your brain. And they actually refer to the gut as being the second brain.
Exactly. Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah.
So using dowsing it is something that sort of can really support people to think about what they're eating. People say, oh, this is healthy for you, that's healthy for you, that's really good for you, whatever. But also think about, what do your taste buds tell you? But I was sort of thinking, no, soya is supposed to be so good for you. But actually so much soya is actually genetically modified.
Exactly, yeah.
That my body the dowsing turned around and said, oh no, your body does not want this stuff. Do not put it in there. So it wouldn't matter how much people said to me, but it's good for you. It's not good for me.
Exactly. And there may be times you think, oh no, I'm just going to eat it anyway, and you won't feel very well after that. You say, no, I'm going to trust my dowsing next time. Or you learn, it's a continuing learning process. But anybody got any questions? No.
Everybody's to be very quiet. So obviously you're answering questions without sort of having to have them asked, which is brilliant. And Paul, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything that you can think of that you haven't touched on that you'd like to share before we close? No,
it's just have an air of it, approach it in a light-hearted sort of manner. You don't have to be a believer that it will work. I always say, just allow the possibility. Just allow the possibility that it might work for you, and experiment and see how you get on. And when it does work, just stop completely and finish on a high, as remote viewers would say. They always stop on a high when they've got a success in remote viewing in the US military. They stop on a high, and then when you go back to it, do something else. You remember that success, and you build on that. So that's the way to approach it.
Brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, because it is evening here in the UK, folks.
Yeah, it's certainly
but thank you for sharing with us. Folks, if you want to get in touch with Paul, I will actually, let's find his website address, because I know I've got it here somewhere. Do connect with him through his website. If you're watching this via the YouTube video, I will make sure that it's under there as well, so that you can connect with him. Sort of by all means do. And that the link to the Dowsing for Beginners home study is up there as well. I'll make sure that's under the video. So Paul, thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
It's been a real pleasure. Next week, I'm going to be sharing a meditation, Play and the Inner Child. So I hope that you will join us for that. Paul, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And folks, we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.